Ruto must go. Doesn't need much interpretation, does it? Over 20 people.
Hi everyone, my name is Ray Frank. I am a game developer with Raytech Games, and today I just want to show you how I make my games, because I get this question quite a bit. So I hope you guys enjoy the video and enjoy me showing you how I make my games. So we are now looking at my main screen, and right now this game is basically plain. It's just with no effects. So the one thing that I think people have told me that stands out in my games is that the visuals and the graphics look really good for a game that has just been made within a short time. So I want to show you how I do those visuals. So currently, if we go to our main scene, it's pretty much empty with just a few landscapes, trees and forests. If I show you this game and how it plays right now, it plays well, but it does not look visually appealing as most people would say. So like right now, it just looks pretty plain. It's not the most appealing thing, and as of now, the only thing basically you can do is just basically kill enemies. That's just the what you can do for now. So I'm going to show you how I make this game have the Raytech effect. So for my games, I basically have I use a post-processing plugin. It's something that makes the game look visually appealing, so I'll just show you how I do it. So the first thing I add is a layer. It's like something that how do I say this? Something that essentially tells the camera what to do with certain effects. So that's what the layer is. So I just use anti-aliasing to smooth out the lines. If you look at it without any anti-aliasing, you can tell how blunt it looks. Then when I add the anti-aliasing, now you can tell that it's more smooth, more sharper. So let's start by adding the effects. So the first effect that I normally add is color grading, because that's the simple one, and I use the high definition range to give it that depth of high definition, HD in short. Then I'll add a tone map, and usually it will be it will make it look like a film. That's what a tone map is. So I use the ACES tone map, and that basically makes it look like a film. So you can tell by the difference already. Now it's more, let's say, filmic, if that's a word. Then the next thing I do is I lower the exposure so that it has that dark vibe, and that's it for the color grading. Then the next thing that I do is I add an effect called vignette. Now vignette is basically an effect that focuses on the player. So it basically blacks out everything else and just focuses on the player. That's what I can say a vignette is. And I use the classic one. Let's bump up the sensitivity a bit. Yeah, just smoothen it out. Yeah, and that's it for the vignette. Then the next thing that I add screen space reflections. So this basically reflects anything that looks reflective. So things like water, things like anything shiny will definitely reflect. So if I just set these attributes, you can tell now that the water has a shiny effect. That's how I do it. Then the next effect I add is ambient occlusion. Now this one just makes shadows appear more realistic. So I just turn all this up and bump up the sensitivity. Now you can see the shadows are already in place. This is without the shadows. You can see how it looks. And then when I bump up the intensity, you can tell that the shadows are now in place. Then the other thing that I add is motion blur. So basically this, when you move, it makes it look like there's some kind of wind. That's simple to explain. And I think finally the last thing that I add is lens distortion. So I distort the camera lens a bit, so that now the lens can look like you're seeing from a camera view like this. Yeah, that's how I can explain it. So I turn these features on, all of them, and I just slowly increase it a bit, so you can see it has that camera like effect when I bump up the sensitivity. Then the last thing that I probably add now is it's a bit of grain, so that it has that old film kind of look. Yeah. Now if I just increase the light, the source of light, or I use a spotlight actually. So if we play this game with the spotlight on, you'll now start to see the effects taking in place. So now, as you can see, you can kind of see the exposure is a bit low, and let me just increase it a bit. Yeah, so now you can kind of see that effect in place. That's how I make my visuals. So this is what the game looks like so far. And if I play around with it, it's basically in first person view, so what you can see is basically your hands only, and basically how a normal human would see. A normal human only sees the hands, feet, legs, things like that. So this is what it looks like from my view, and then this is what you guys see in the game view. So yeah, that's how I improve my visuals, make it look scary, dark, giving it that kind of film energy. And as you can see, it almost looks closer to real life, and that's how I do it. Now the other thing that I get is how I program in C#. Well, I can basically show you my code. Hopefully you get to understand how I do it. So this code is basically in C#. C# is an object-oriented programming language that basically code is like logic for the game. It basically what tells the game what to do at a certain point. That's what I can say. So for example, this is the code for the character, basically the movement. This is what controls all the attributes. So when you click on the move button, that's what it tells it tells the game how to move the character. Then my code is pretty simple. It's not too complicated. I just have a few elements I can show you. So if we start, I store everything under a class of objects. That's why it's called an object-oriented programming language. Then this is code for the camera, to update the camera when you're moving. This is code for input when you're clicking on the buttons. This one updates the rotation of the camera. This one checks if you're running. If you hold down the shift key and the move button, that's what it's checking for. And yeah, that's the basic idea of that code. Then the other code that I use is now for like the weapons. So you have 3 weapons in the game. think I can show you the weapons you have in the game. So in this game I chose to have 3 weapons. So you have a torch, then you have a knife, and lastly you have an axe. So the torch, the knife, and the axe, and they both do different types of damage. So like for the knife, obviously we'll just cut your enemy and yeah, the enemy dies. That's for the knife. The axe will do the same thing, but now with of course more damage to it, and the torch just helps you see. So if we go back to our code, that's what this code does. It basically checks what weapon you're using, and if you're using, of course, in human logic, an axe should definitely harm you more than a knife. So that's what this code does basically, and that's what I can say. That's how I make my games. Hopefully I can't show everything because basically it would take forever, but I hope that you got to enjoy me making my games. That's how I do the visuals, that's how I do the coding, and the rest is to just make an amazing story out of it. So this game basically is about Gen Z, the uprising. It's basically talking about the dark side of how Gen Z with the current protests, how they were handling it. It starts in the forest where you meet with your fellow Gen Zs to discuss how to hold the protests. Then it ends up in the city. Yeah, so that's what I can say about this one. I use Unity for most of my games. You may have seen that I use Unreal, so that's also another thing. And yeah, I'm hoping that you've enjoyed this video.